everyone, it's Janice, host of the Divorcing Religion podcast. Thanks for tuning into my show, whether you're joining me on audio or video. I've heard from some folks recently who have told me just how much the show has meant, and some of them have even found it not only to be life-changing, but life-saving, as they felt there was no one else who understood what they were going through, and they found the Divorcing Religion podcast, and they started feeling encouraged. Please help me keep my show on the air. Become a member by clicking the join button on the Conference on Religious Trauma YouTube channel. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selby. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious trauma recovery coach. I do have a warning for you before we get started today, because today we will be discussing issues related to suicide. Lindsey Doolittle is my guest today, and I'm grateful to my friend and colleague, Dr. Darrel Ray, for introducing us. Lindsey was introduced to me as a documentary filmmaker who recently focused her lens on Dr. Ray's work at recovering from religion. Please see today's show notes for more information on this documentary. In speaking with Lindsey, I learned that she has a powerful story of her own to share. Here is some information from her website, Above the Rug. Lindsey Doolittle is an art educator, children's author, artist to the Faces After Suicide exhibition, and an award-winning independent filmmaker. Her advocacy began shortly after her late husband, Sergeant Brett Doolittle of the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department, died by suicide in 2015. Welcome, Lindsey. I'm so glad you could join me today.
Thanks for having me on.
I was so delighted to hear from Darrel, Dr. Ray, that you're an independent filmmaker and you have already started. You've followed him around doing some interviews, and you attended, I think, the American Atheist Convention. I saw, of course, I was looking at the crowdfunding, the GoFundMe that you have set up, and we're going to include a link to that. And I saw it looked like you maybe interviewed Seth and Dave Warnock. There were some other people there. So obviously you have an interest in recovering from religion. Was religion part of your childhood growing up or part of your family?
Actually, no. I grew up in a house where my parents wanted us to choose for ourselves, and I really appreciate that. I didn't know how important that was until later in life. So I do appreciate my parents letting us choose. So no, I didn't grow up religious, but it wasn't until after my husband died. And when my husband died by suicide, I wasn't expecting people's responses of, like, people would come right up. I think they thought they were doing a good thing by telling me that my husband was burning in hell. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
And a lot of people would say, oh, he's up in heaven. He's looking down on you. And he's walking alongside you. He's burning in hell. And I was thinking, well, which one is it? Make up your minds. Or how about maybe ask me what me and my late husband believed, because that wasn't being asked. So I found out that the grief and loss world was very heavily saturated in religion.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah. Even when I look at, I'm always doing things to update my own education, keep me current with trends and ideas and knowledge in the counseling field. And the courses that I'm able to find and the books are typically all from a very Christian or at least very spiritual point of view. I really haven't found many books written about grief and mourning and loss for people who maybe aren't religious or aren't even spiritual. And I think that's significant. That's something that deserves some exploration. And I'm so sorry that was your own experience. I can't believe people actually came up to you and said such horrible horrible things. That's just a terrible thing.
I appreciate what you do because I did have my very first therapist that I had, because we had a marriage counselor, and she had to get her own therapist after Brett died, but different topic. But I got my very first therapist for myself after he died, and I didn't know that she was like a religious counselor. I didn't know that that was a thing. And she as well said I was very lost and sad when I told her I was an atheist. And it was sad that I didn't have a place for my late husband up in heaven, that I was thinking about that. And that was the last time I saw her. So I appreciate what you do. So thank you.
Wow, that is just so. Then, if you're already experiencing grief and loss, and then you get some judgment thrown in on top of that because you don't happen to believe the same way as the mental health clinician, I have my air quotes going there, believed. So that is just nuts. So then, how did you end up finding out about recovering from religion and about Dr. Ray and his work?
So I live in Kansas City, and it was a couple of years after his death. I didn't know how much I needed community. I thought that my late husband's police department was going to be there for me. They were not. I had people in my life that I thought were going to be there for me. And I think it was too hard for them, or they just didn't know what to say. And so they disappeared. And then I found Oasis, the community without religion, and it was amazing. And one of the very first speakers that I heard at Oasis was Dr. Darrel Ray, and he was talking about the American flag, and it was everything I felt in my heart. And like, I don't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm a public school educator. And here I'm, seeing and hearing this person up on stage talking about everything that I was hiding inside of myself. And it felt empowering to hear him speak. And like, I could speak up then. So yeah, we became really great friends, and then learning about recovering from religion through him. And I am also, I don't know if you knew, but I'm a group facilitator for recovering from religion now. I do the support groups for suicide loss survivors, since we don't find religion helpful in our grief journey. And I'm also one of the ambassadors for recovering from religion too.
That's so wonderful. Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. And yeah, shout out to Oasis. What a great group. And they were there when you needed them. That's just really exciting. And then to connect with Darrel through that group, that's just so wonderful. And now you are helping people also through the volunteer work that you're doing with recovering from religion. And now, I think when you and I had spoken initially, you mentioned about being a teacher, working with children, so not teenagers and adolescents, but with children, and that your late husband, used to come and visit you there at the school in his uniform. And so they were wondering, where is he? What's happening? And you weren't able to talk to them. You weren't able to tell them what actually had happened. And so I'm guessing then that is part of what launched you into the independent filmmaking, or am I wrong? Had you already started that aspect of your career in your life prior to that?
No, I never did any kind of filmmaking prior to Brett's death. It feels like my life is divided into before Brett and then after death of Brett.
Mm-hmm.
And, I never wanted to be a filmmaker. He wanted to be a filmmaker. But
Interesting.
that's not the road that he went down. But yeah, after his death, I was in such a terrible way. I describe it always like despair and agony. I felt like it was going to be despair and agony for the rest of my life. I had never felt that kind of pain before. And I also found my late husband, and being blamed from his colleagues in the police report and the autopsy report. Um, it, I felt like it trumped his death itself, because I didn't feel that it was my fault. But then when I found him, when I saw what they wrote in that police report, I did blame myself for a very long time. And actually, about a year and a half after his death, I attempted on my life, and I had never had those feelings in my life before. So it was bad. And the way that I worked through my grief, I mean, I did a lot of unhealthy things to numb that pain. I did everything I could to numb that pain for a long time. And then healthier ways started happening. I hate to write, but I started writing. It's like I couldn't get enough of writing. And when my school district, when I had a principal, no longer do I have this principal, but the kids were asking, what happened to Officer Doolittle? Because he ate lunch with me at the school, and I told them, or they were making up stories, which, because I wasn't filling in the blanks. So they were making up stories of he died in a fire, he got shot in the line of duty, which none of it was true. And I felt, just like with how society is as a whole, you keep it a secret. You don't tell children, you're going to put it in their heads. So I went to my principal at the time and asked if I could at least say he was sick. And she said, I wouldn't go that far. And it made me feel so ashamed and very isolated, even more so than I felt. And so I wrote a children's story on how to explain a suicide loss in a gentle way to kids, using Vincent van Gogh's life. I mean, as an art teacher, as art teachers, we're in our curriculum, we're supposed to talk about Van Gogh and his life, but there's so many things that are tiptoed around. And, we'll show them Starry Night and say, this is a beautiful painting that he painted of Starry Night. But we're not saying where he was when he painted it, that he was getting help in a hospital for his own depression, his own experiences. We'll show them the picture of his portrait after he cut off part of his ear. But we don't say anything about, that was self-harm or that he was hurting inside. We just kind of tiptoe around that. And so I wrote this children's book to help explain that suicide loss.
And what's the name of that book?
Good Night, Mr. Vincent van Gogh. And it's also, I didn't know there was a museum, a Vincent van Gogh museum in the Netherlands, where he worked and lived. The artist worked and lived, and they requested that book to be in their library. It's on permanent display there.
How beautiful. That's wonderful. And I really appreciate you taking his life and his experience and his own tremendous struggles with mental health and using it, making it into a teaching opportunity. That is such a beautiful way to do it. So the children will never have the opportunity to meet this person except through his art. So there's a little bit of emotional room there, a little bit of space there. But we're in such a time where mental health, it feels like collectively we are struggling, but also we're willing to talk about these things more for the first time now. I mean, even children saying, I'm having anxiety or something. We can't ignore it. We can't keep keeping things, sweeping things under the rug. We need to be able to talk about them, and especially with children, to give them language and tools to talk about their feelings and their experiences. So I'm so just happy that you did that book, because it's on such an important topic. Well done. And so did the did the principal know? Like, did you write the book and bring it to school and say, here's a book we're going to read?
That's what I wanted to say, because there is a place in Missouri called Tri-County Mental Health, and they wanted to buy the book for every school in the Tri-County area, including my school. And it went into our library, and and it was there ready, available for children to read. And it felt so good that I could be able to, speak up in my own way. Even though she silenced me, I didn't remain silenced, and I still have my job. And the kids know what happened to my late husband. And guess what? They're okay. They're okay. They know
Wow.
So
That's just, I think that's so powerful. How you did that you managed to use everything you knew, being an art teacher, to end up facilitating that conversation then with the children. And I mean, there are children in schools who are coping with the loss of parents and siblings and relatives, and family friends through suicide. And they need also to know that they can talk about it. They can approach adults about it. They can express themselves, because it's so traumatizing to lose a loved one in this way, and then the isolation, and then the shame, and everything that's heaped on people who just absolutely don't need this, and they're trying to recover themselves, recover from the loss. So having language to talk about it is very important.
absolutely. Thanks for asking
Wow.
that question.
Yeah. Oh, I find that people, even, not in rooms with children, just, generally talking with people, they are hesitant even to ask about suicidality. If someone, if someone is maybe considering suicide, if we see signs that indicate maybe someone is preparing to take their own life, rather than just be quiet about it, we're allowed to ask about it. We're allowed to inquire, and just to remind the person, let them know that we're here and we care, and we see that they've been maybe giving away items, or that maybe a depression is really plaguing them at this point. We can talk about it. And in fact, it's better to talk about it. Just the fact of bringing something up does not mean that somebody is going to run with that idea then, and they're going to take their own life, just because we bring it up. So we need to get over that fear and learn about making death, and even death by suicide, a part of our conversation. It's not something that's out of reach and pushed into the corner that we can't talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your website then. So you're still a teacher. You've written this book, and then you started doing films, independent films as well. This seems like an awful lot on your plate. And you have this really incredible website as well that's full of resources too. So kind of, how did that come about? Which did you do first?
I feel like the book started, really what catapulted me was my anger for the police department. I thank them. I thank them for not being there for me. I thank them for just the blame, because it really lit a fire under me. I thought I was the only one that was experiencing this, but I have found many others that are blamed and they're shunned. for their loved one's death. And I think that needs to be talked about.
Is that particularly, you found that in kind of the police family, that family members are blamed?
It is rampant in law enforcement, military. It does not matter really what career. It's like people want to point the finger to the one that was closest to that person who died by suicide, and they want to blame them. They're the catalyst. It also makes people feel better, like this can't happen in my life, but it did happen in theirs. And they then want to start talking, judging, dissecting things that they don't know about. And I went to a support group immediately after Brett died. And I've been in support groups for 9 years now, and you meet so many people that have been blamed, and how devastating that is in itself. Even people who are religious, how they're blamed by their churches or they're shunned by their churches. And it's a loss in itself right there. Yeah.
Wow. And I can see that happening as an attempt at self-protection with people. So even I know when I hear of there's been an accident, I right away am thinking, were they speeding? Was someone drinking? Were they wearing their seatbelt? I'm running through all these things as a way to comfort myself. Well, that, somehow they must have contributed to it or whatever, but I never do those things. It's not, I don't even think it's something that we're typically aware of, but people, when they have someone or something to blame, makes them feel safer. Like, oh, well, that would never happen to me. But in doing that, we isolate the survivors, the loved ones, and it's just unfair and unhelpful, frankly.
Yeah, and it's children too that they'll blame themselves as well. Mm-hmm. So I kind of made it my mission to speak up on this particular topic. I find that people did not really mind making me feel uncomfortable and telling me and sharing with me, asking me even, was it your fault? So I don't mind now just speaking up and not making masking myself and trying to make other people feel comfortable. And that, I think that's also part of just also meeting Dr. Darrel Ray and how he speaks up, and just having a voice that just has really inspired me. So I try to speak up on not blaming the lost survivors.
Yes. Wow. And especially because we do know there can be increased risk in family members when they have lost a person, a loved one, to suicide. And I feel like that can be because of this isolation, because of this blame. And I mean, you didn't blame yourself. And then you read the report, the police report. And I mean, incredibly, they tried to pin, the blame on you, on the marriage. And then at some point you did start thinking, well, maybe I did contribute somehow. And that can be such a terrible slippery slope because it's such a horrible weight. And we can't bring back the deceased person to ask and shake their shoulders and say, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't we talk about it? It's like this huge question mark and unfinished business that's left there. And so we really do need support when we lose someone to suicide. And again, children don't have the words maybe to talk about these things and might be even confused. And like you said, really blaming themselves. So we have to be able to talk about this.
Yeah, and I will also add, because of my late husband's suicide letter, he blamed the police department, and he said I was what kept him going, and how much he felt a burden on me, and but he blamed the police department for his suicide, and they had this. I gave him the suicide letter. I handed it right over to them. I mean, they took a lot of things out of my house. So they were investigating a homicide, not a suicide. Like
Oh my
they are not
gosh.
equipped for I feel suicide loss, especially of their own colleagues. So they interviewed me. They didn't interview anybody else. Like I had to come in and give official police report. But they were interviewing, they had to make sure that it was a suicide. And thankfully, my late husband methodically planned this out to where I wasn't going to be blamed. There's a lot of, like, as far as seriously blamed for like a homicide. And I'm really grateful for that part that he made sure that I wasn't going to, go through any kind of trial there. But yeah, he blamed them and they blamed me and my marriage for his death. And I don't blame anyone. I don't even blame them. I've always said that his life exceeded his coping skills. And that's where I leave it. It's never just one thing. I feel like it's a tornado of many things. And there was so many things I found out after his death that he never shared with me. And so, no, I don't blame myself anymore. I know it's not my fault. But that feeling, that guilt, that shame, that's kind of where I feel like somebody who's died in the line of duty, or they've had a physical illness, there's an accident. The mourners who are left behind, they receive sympathy and empathy from people. They get casseroles at the funeral, whereas the suicide loss survivor is blamed and shunned. And they're ask me if I got a casserole. Just ask me.
Wow. Wow. I know you mentioned on your website that his like the higher ranking officers or his superiors or whatever didn't even attend in their official uniforms at the
The
funeral.
chief did not. He came in a suit, and where I thought everyone got a uniform, and he showed up in a suit, and that was that was his way of showing this is a weakness. This is not important to me, and it was. I feel it was a weakness on his part. And I've tried to ask him several times about it. I've reached out to him several times, and he's ignored me several times. And that is not uncommon, I have found, amongst other police widows of suicide.
Right. And is there a survivor support group for police widows of suicide that you know of? I mean, it seems like that would be, it's such a high pressure career to be in. I feel like maybe it has a higher number of suicides within that career. I don't know.
Is there a suicide support group for them? I know that they're out there. I belonged for a long time to a support group that it was for any suicide loss survivor. And it was wonderful. It was the best gift that I gave myself. And then I even was on the board. I will say, though, when they would have their annual walks for suicide loss survivors, I brought up the fact that there was a prayer that was being given at the walks. And I had brought up that, not everybody is religious, or they don't pray to the same God. And I came out atheist in that in that board meeting,
Yeah.
and it was like a mutiny. It was a mutiny. The emails that I got, that I was referred to as a witch.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
yeah, it was. So I no longer am with that support group. I send them light and love, but I'm with recovering from religion. I'm there for suicide loss survivors that we just don't want to have religion part of our grief journey.
Yeah. Wow. So tell me a little bit more about that then. The group with RFR. Do you have a regular, like, do you meet once a month online? Is that how the meeting goes?
Yes, second Tuesday of every month, we meet online, and we've had suicide loss survivors attend from Italy, from Spain, um, all over the US. It's just whoever would like to sign on that evening, and we're there for them to listen, not try to fix. We're there to listen because it's peer led. Um, so, uh, yeah, it's from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time. So,
Mhm. Wow. Wow. Yeah. I'm sad that there's even a need for that, but there obviously is a need for that. And I imagine, pretty much as long as humans have been around, there have been humans that have, how was it? You said it so beautifully about life exceeded his coping ability. What was that sentence that you said?
life exceeded his coping skills.
That was it. Yeah, that's so honest and yet such a compassionate and very realistic way to look at it. There doesn't have to be blame, right? It's something that has occurred and transpired. So then, how do you think that we should be talking with children in elementary school and high school about suicide? Do you think it's something that should be a component of some curriculum? I mean, we know that kids and young people, adolescents, they're having so many hormone storms, and there's so much relationship drama, and your body's changing and everything's, it's a really hard time growing up. Um, and we want kids to know that they can talk to someone about these things. You've written this book. Do you know if teachers are using the book in their classrooms, or is it just individual?
As far as right now, it's individual, and it's usually after someone has died that this book is now needed. Some people are even hesitant to put it out inside the library because they'll keep it behind the library counter, and it's not until there's been a death by suicide that, oh, let's bring this book out. Um, I would say my school district right now, that they're progressing. It's not like it was 9 years ago when this happened. It is definitely progressing. We have the suicide lifeline, the hotline, the 988 number. We have that in our elementary school, and it says "You matter" on the poster. So we're talking about things more. I still see, though, when a suicide has happened, it's very hush hush. It is like we don't talk about it, and so that destroys me a little inside. Um, but it's also the call of the family, and I totally empathize when they do say, we don't want this talked about. Um, because I wasn't even sure if I could talk about it after my late husband. So, but it's like we're being reactive and not proactive, and that's what I
Mhm.
really want, is that proactive side. Because when we have a staff member or a student like who's died of leukemia or diabetes, we're there. We're there fundraising. We're there to support and just wrap our arms around those people. When it's a suicide, you don't know. There's nothing. It's just so quiet. Unless the family is willing to speak up about it. And even then, it's still like people are hesitant to even talk about it.
Right. I'm wondering, because you're also an art instructor, an art teacher. So, do you see what role is there for art in facilitating healing and even conversations and getting feelings out? Yeah, what about that?
Uh, I tell my students, I tell my kiddos, it's not about what it looks like, it's about how you feel about it. And don't let anybody else try to tell you anything different. Like technique is not as important to me as the content and how my kiddos feel inside and just getting it out, and that we're all different. So you shouldn't be comparing your artwork to the other kid next to you. They have no idea how much they've helped me through my loss journey. Creating art alongside them. I've definitely even just changed the way I teach as an art teacher after this whole experience. There are positives that have come out of this. I really wish it hadn't happened in my life, because there is some residual, some damaging residual that happens daily, because I have complex post-traumatic stress, and I seek still help for that. But there are a lot of positives. Needing Oasis, having my Oasis family would never have happened if this didn't happen. Meeting people like you and Dr. Ray, who are out there making a difference. It's definitely even changed about like the people that inspire me, who speak up for others. Those are the people I look up to. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Being able to see, even in the midst of a very, very difficult situation, here you are a few years down the road from it, and you can see that there have been some positives that you have been able to create out of this very, very difficult time. I'm wondering then, when it comes to your independent filmmaking, how did that come about? I don't think the documentary with Darrel, that wasn't your first one. You have had other projects.
Yeah, I didn't even think what I had made was a film. I just knew I had to make it. I was like, I just need to make this film. And it was about being blamed as a loss survivor. And that was my first documentary. It was 7 minutes. And then I didn't even do anything with it. I just kind of pushed it to the side. And I was like, man, I really need to make an animation of my book. I want to put that out there. And I didn't think of it as a film or anything like that. And then it was my mom's friend who really encouraged me to put the films in film festivals. And I even said this, I don't think that these are what they're looking for. And I had only ever been to one film festival before that. So I didn't know how it worked or anything, but I just went ahead and took a chance, and I submitted it, and like all of these places, all these film festivals started just, picking it up, wanting to show it at their theater. And I had submitted it at places I wanted to travel to. So
good for you.
I went to Scotland. I went to Ireland. I had it shown in India. I've had it shown in Prague and Japan. And I wasn't able to go to those last few places I mentioned because it was COVID and there was the whole shutdown. But just to even have it, shown at these places, I just was, I just knew that there was a need. I just didn't know how much of a need, and finding out that it's so worldwide.
Wow. That's incredible. That in itself is an incredible story. And you're absolutely right. There is such a need. There's a hunger for people to be able to discuss topics that society has deemed taboo or trying to push under the rug. And this is something that I love about this generation and generations that I think are coming up after, the refusal to be quiet just because we were told it's poor manners to talk about something. Important things need to be talked about, whether it's death, whether it's sex, whatever it is. It's part of the human experience. And we need to be able to talk about all these things. I'm super excited that your films have had they've been so welcome. That's just a delightful thing. Tell me a little bit more then about working with Dr. Ray and the work that you did on that. Is the project complete, or is there more filming to be done?
So I thought we were wrapped on filming, and then now we're going through, we have over 40 hours of footage. And Patrick Ray is my editor. He has films streaming online, on Hulu, on Amazon Prime. And I have a lot of people that are working on this project because they believe in this project. Patrick Ray he says he's a recovering Catholic. And
is he related to Darrel Ray?
No.
Okay.
And we're looking through the footage and we're finding, okay, we need to shoot this and we need to shoot that. And so there's a couple of things this summertime. Now that I'm off for the summer, as of on Friday, I'm able to use this summertime to continue working, to continue shooting. So yeah, hopefully we're wanting this to be done by the end of this year. But as an independent filmmaker, I don't have deadlines, but it is something that I'm super passionate about, and I want people to see, but I want to have it seen right, done right for people. I want people to be proud of it. I want Recovering from Religion to be proud of it. I want to be proud of it. So yeah, there's pressure, but it's good pressure. Nobody's giving me that pressure but myself, because I just want to make sure, especially Dr. Darrel Ray, that I want it done right.
And you are an independent filmmaker, so to my mind, that also means there have to be financial pressures. I don't think people even stop to consider the work and, of course, the expense involved in making a film. And the reason I found out about your film with Darrel is because I had just come back from Stockholm, where my husband and I went because there was a screening of a documentary we participated in called Leaving Jesus. And that was filmed in San Francisco over a number of retreats that were hosted by Dr. Marlene Winnell, another pioneer in the field of religious trauma, a colleague of Dr. Ray. And so the filmmakers had attended some of the retreats my husband and I had been to there, and they made it into this Leaving Jesus documentary. So I was talking with Darrel about it, and he says, well, I'll have you know, there's a documentary that's also being filmed about recovering from religion and their work. And that was just so exciting. But I didn't know until we were at the film studio in Stockholm and meeting with all the behind the scenes people. I couldn't believe it. There were people for music and people for film color, and people for every single little aspect that went into all this. And as an independent filmmaker, I mean, you're kind of putting the money out front to do these things. You've got travel expenses, and then you're staying someplace. You have to pay for that location. It's time away from work. It's a lot of money that goes into having to make a film the right way.
Yep, I would agree with that statement because, you know, it's uh, it's been challenging, but I know that this is going to get done one way or the other. Uh, as a public school educator, what they say about our salaries is completely true.
Mm.
But the also from my late husband, working with the police department and the money that I inherited, I wanted to make sure that it was put to good use. And I wanted also, uh, it's being put to good use, but also like police culture is so saturated with religion as well. So it's kind of like my little, there you go. This is what I'm using it for. The documentary on being blamed. I used that money because I wanted all these film festivals I've gone to. I have thanked that Kansas City, Kansas Police Department and that chief. I thank them every chance I get. They didn't want to listen to me. That's okay. I will find other people that will listen. And so this money, I wanted it to be put to good use. At the same time, it's also really helpful when people can donate to the projects because it's not like my late husband was making the big bucks as a police officer either. But I wanted to make sure what I did get was going to, it was going to be for a good purpose for me and for others.
Beautiful. Wow. Is the project with recovering from religion, has that been kind of your largest scope of a project? Like the longest, you said you have 40 hours of film footage already that you're going to have to be whittling down to a more manageable amount. And your other ones maybe were like 7 minutes or 20 minutes or however long they were. This one's going to be a longer one?
Going to be longer. I still want to create a short. And shorts, it just depends at film festivals, but usually no longer than 45 minutes because I really want to pack a punch. In the films that I do, I like packing a punch in a short amount of time, but this is definitely going to be longer than 7 minutes. And yes, we've done traveling for the American Atheist Conference. When we went to Phoenix, Arizona, we went to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee for the fall excursion. Dr. Darrel Ray lives like 40 minutes away from me, so that wasn't too bad. But the equipment, paying people for their time, their effort, their skills, that's important to me. And like the music, the coloring, the movie posters, yes, everything that goes behind the scenes. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and you feel a little alone in that. But I know that there are so many people that have been supporting this film, so I feel a little less alone in that regard. That's what keeps me going.
Does it cost money also to enter film festivals? Like, can anybody just submit something? I have no idea what that's like.
It costs, and then there is a judging process. They are all screened, and so to be selected even is a prize in itself. The awards, it's like cherry on the sundae, but to have it just shown is a good feeling. It's a good feeling. And
so how does that?
Oh,
sorry. How does it work for films that are in other countries then? Because you mentioned Prague and Japan and India, places where your film has been shown. Did you reach out to those film festivals in those countries, or did other people who saw your film send it on and say, you guys should really be paying attention to this?
I submitted all of them because I didn't know anything about film festivals at the time. So I submitted to all these places, and but now there are people who I've film festival directors or other filmmakers, becoming friends and having this community and on social media has been really great on getting the word out for recovering from religion. A lot of people are like, please send us your film when you're finished.
Wow. Yeah. And even as you say that, it reminds me of I just recently interviewed a woman in New Zealand, and she's an international journalist. And she actually put together a conference being held in New Zealand, the first of its kind, called Decult, like DE, and then cult, looking at cults that have had a profound impact in New Zealand. It's not a very big country, like it's not a heavily populated country, and some of these cults have just had terrible impacts there. And there's a filmmaker there making a documentary about Decult and about the things that have gone on in New Zealand as well. Another woman documentarian and independent filmmaker. So I can't believe I went from not knowing any filmmakers to 3 powerful women in these different countries who are telling these stories that need to be told and deserve to be highlighted. And it just makes me so proud. I'm so proud to know you. It's very exciting to me that I got to meet you. Wow.
Let me tell you that it's awesome to meet you. So thank you. It means a lot coming from you. So thank you.
Oh, well, is there anything as we close our conversation together? Is there anything you'd like to say, thoughts you'd like to leave us with? There may be someone watching or listening who is either struggling with thoughts of suicide or self-harm, or someone who has lost somebody. What would you say to them, or where would you point them?
Well, I first want to just put my shout out to the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. And the second thing is, for me as a loss survivor, for people that may know someone who's lost somebody to suicide and they don't know what to do, that's okay. You can say that. You can say that to the person, say, I don't know what to do, but I'm there for you. And it's okay if you make mistakes, and it's going to happen. But to disappear is maybe rethink that and check in on loved ones. And it's going to be a long haul. I also would say, for anybody who's starting out as a loss survivor and they feel that despair and agony, and they don't see any kind of hope for them, but there is hope that you can have joy in your life, that you don't get over it, you get through it. That's what I would like to leave with.
Wow, that is powerful. You don't get over it, you get through it. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, your experience with us. Again, one more time, give us the name of your website.
It is Above the Rug, because I felt like the police department swept it all under the rug. So I'm abovetherug.com.
Love it. That is fantastic. And is that the best way people can get a hold of you, is through your website?
Yep. Website. And then I tinker around with Facebook.
That's wonderful. Okay. Thanks again, Lindsey. It was so great to see you. And don't be a stranger. If I can do anything to help support your work moving forward, please let me know.
Thank you. And congratulations on the film that you're in. That's awesome.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. Please take care of yourselves, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.